Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Today I'm gel printing with something from the bathroom, and this creates a great buildup of colors that creates a great weathered look to a print. And what is this tool? It's a hairbrush. Yeah, you can use one of these things on a gel plate, and let me show you how. Now this is the hairbrush that I used, and just so you know, there's nothing special about it. It was just one of a billion in the bathroom as I was cleaning it out, and I realized I could sacrifice one of these for some play. Now what I've done there is I've simply taken some paint and put it along one of the rows of bristles. And then all you do is drag that hairbrush lightly down the gel plate, and you get these great streaks of color. Now when I take this pull, the first print, it's going to be okay, but I promise you, as you get more layers of color built up on there, the better it'll look. Now, if you want to get more paint onto the gel plate, simply press down a little bit harder on your hairbrush and more of that paint will transfer. So when I take this print, because there was more paint on the plate, there's going to be more paint on the print. What I found when I'm doing this technique is I like to do multiple papers, because what I'm going to be doing as I'm playing in all these blues and greens here today is I'm just going to keep taking these three papers and putting them on there to pick up different streaks of color. And as long as there's paint still coming off that brush, I'm going to keep adding layers to these three. Now 3 is not a magical number. If I want to do this with 5 or 2 or 10, it's all personal preference. For me, I like working in 3 because I'm able to keep it more under the camera for you here. But when you're doing this, you can do any number that you want, of course. Now after this blue, what color am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do another blue. Now it is a different color of blue, so it's going to add a little bit more to the print. And by the way, the names of all the paints that I'm using, I'm terrible at remembering their actual names, so I'll have the links down below for you. They're all Liquitex paints, and of course you can substitute with whatever colors you like, whatever kind of paints you like. These are the ones that I just like doing with it. All right, so I've got some more blue on that gel plate, and I'm going to take one of those existing prints on there to build up the layers. Now that blue was not terribly different from the first blue, a little bit. And when you've got two colors that are kind of similar but not the same, it can add some interesting sort of quiet depth and layering to this, because a whole bunch of layers are going to be built up. And a little bit later in the video, you will see a stronger, brighter color come into this, so you'll also see some things that really pop. Now for this lighter blue, I did use a little bit more paint than I did on the first two colors. And the reason for that is, I didn't really intend to. I just kind of squeezed the tube a little bit harder than I expected, so more paint came out. And with this, as I'm putting each color on, it's not that I'm really going for an exact amount. I'm just putting some color there onto those bristles and then dragging it along that gel plate. What I found is if I have a lot of paint on there, I get more paint on the gel plate. And if I have less paint on there, I get less paint on the gel plate. And if you're thinking, well, Carolyn, that sounds pretty simple right there. You're right. It really is that simple. If you put less paint on the brush, you get finer, littler lines. And if you've got more paint on there, then you're going to get a little bit thicker of a line. Now, as I'm doing this, by the way, because I did have a glob of blue on there, I'm doing it very, very lightly, because that's another thing you can do. If you go lightly, you can get more of those gentle streaks. And if you use a little more pressure, you can get more of that paint to get on there. Now the next color that I want to put on here, I want to put a really bright green. So once I'm done with that light blue and used up all the paint that's on that brush, I've got a perfect light green to use. Except I've run into a little bit of a problem. I know what color of green I want, but I can't seem to find it. I might actually be out of it. So what am I going to do? Well, I always say the best thing to use is whatever you've got within arm's reach. So if I don't have a green, I'm going to make a green. Now the green that I want is a really bright, vivid lime, like Shazam, right there at you kind of green. So to create that, I'm taking a darker green that I've got, a Viridian green, and I've put a small amount of that on one of the bristles. And then I'm going to come in with some bright yellow. And I'm not going to be shy with this yellow. I'm putting a fair amount on there. And my hope is that the colors will mix together to create that bright lime green as I'm dragging that hairbrush. Now you might be wondering, well, why didn't you just mix the colors on a palette before and then put it on? And I definitely could have done that, I just didn't feel like taking the time on that extra step. So I thought, we'll see if the hairbrush can mix it up for us well enough. So fingers crossed here. As I'm lifting this up, did I get a bright green? And oh yeah, I did. It's a beautiful, beautiful bright green that really stands out in those layers. Oh, one thing you might want to watch out for if you're using an old hairbrush is an occasional stray hair that gets into your print. Now, if you've got an eagle eye, you might have noticed that every time I put the paint on, I'm putting it right down that center row of bristles. And you're probably thinking, oh, there must be a good reason for that. If you are, you're giving me way more credit than what I deserve because nope, I just started putting it there and I just kept putting it in the same place. It's not that it has to be in the center. It can be on any of the bristles that you want. Oh, and something that I found fascinating about this hairbrush, which is not special, by the way, been around for years. I was cleaning out drawers in the bathroom kind of thing and realized there were way too many of these things in there, which is why one ended up here in the play. But the thing that I found out that was fascinating to me about hairbrushes is how well they clean up from paint. Because I've got a bunch of colors in here. That blue paint that I started with is dried on there. When I'm all done playing here, I can put it under this sink, rinse it out, and all the paint actually comes off of it. I'm amazed at how well those bristles clean off. And actually, as soon as I take this pull, I'm going to go clean off the brush because it's got all those blues and greens on there, and I want to get some bright yellow paint. So, thanks to the magic of computers, you didn't have to wait for me to go rinse off the brush. It's now mostly clean. And so when I put the yellow paint on there, it's going to stay bright yellow. Because again, there were so many greens and blues on there with that yellow, it immediately turned to green before. And I really do want some of that yellow to create another color that's going to layer onto these prints. So when you're doing this, if you ever find that your colors are mixing or blending a lot on the hairbrush for you, and you don't want that to happen, simply go rinse off, clean off the hairbrush, and then put the next color onto it. All right, so now that you know how this process works, I'm going to speed up the camera here so we can get more layers added onto these prints quickly. Now right here, you'll see there was a lot more yellow on the plate. Probably not going to surprise you. You're going to get a lot more yellow on the print. Now sometimes I intentionally put more paint on there so I get more on the print, and sometimes it's not quite so intentional. But with a technique like this, as you're just putting those layers on there, if you don't love how one layer looks, simply add another one on top of it and keep on going. If you're still here watching at this point in the video, it probably means you're having some fun or you're finding this to be a helpful video. And if either of those are the case, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I've got another video out, because there are so many different ways you can play with a gel plate. This is just one of many, 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 many possible ways. Now I'm dragging that hairbrush really, really lightly on the plate so that I get just these great little wispy lines on there, because I just want to add a little touch of that darker blue onto the top. Now these three prints, they're just about finished to me. And a little bit later in the video, I will explain how I decide when prints are about finished with this technique, as well as why I'm using the paper that I'm using. There's a very specific reason why I use this paper, and I'll share that with you a little bit later in the video. But before I get to that, I'm going to wrap up here with these blue prints, and then I'm going to move on to another color. I'm going to get tongue-tied first, and then I'm going to move on to another color scheme. The next set of colors that I'm going to do are warm colors, so oranges and reds and pinks and that kind of thing. I'm also going to be doing 2 prints. On the last one I did 3, on this one I'm doing 2. It's not like there's some kind of big rule we have to follow for how many prints we make at a time. And so you're going to see the colors build up here. Now the paper that I'm using, I mentioned I use it for a very specific reason. And that reason is I like it. I like how it feels. And to me, that's really important. Whatever art supply I'm using is, do I like how it feels? And for me, this heavier weight paper, this is a 90-pound cardstock. This feels good to me. It doesn't mean it's right for everybody, and it's not the perfect anything, but it is what I enjoy using. It's what I like how it feels. And so for you, when you're trying to pick a paper, if you like copy paper, go for it. If you like using junk mail or anything else that you find to make prints on, if you enjoy using it, then that is an absolutely great thing for you to use. If you're just getting started with gel printing and you're wondering what are some ways that you can start creating a gel print, well, I've got a video for you called 600 Gel Printing Ideas for Beginners. And in there, I will show you how to build up layers, and I will show you 600 different possible starts to gel prints. And yeah, it's all in one single video. But because there's so much information in this video, I also have a printable for you so you can have that next to you to help you too. And if you'd like to get that free video, the 600 gel printing ideas, there's a link down below to get signed up, and I can email that all over to you. Now these prints are getting close to finished for me, and the big thing that I'm looking for to decide when these prints are finished is the amount of white space. For me, I just want to have little bits of it peeking out here and there. And oh, by the way, when I'm putting the yellow on here, it totally felt like I was putting mustard on a hot dog as I was putting it on that brush. But anyway, back to how I know when a print is finished for me. With this technique, if I've got a lot of different colors on there and there's not a lot of white space showing, then at any point after that, when I really love how it looks, I can call it complete and finished. Now that one, there was still a little bit of white space there, so I'm just simply putting the paper down, trying to grab a little bit of paint here and there, just to fill in some of those white spaces. Well, thanks for joining me for today's play. I so appreciate you spending this time here. If you've enjoyed this video, if you had fun, go ahead and give it that thumbs up. And of course, if you know of somebody that you think would enjoy this video, share it with them. That way they can join in the fun too. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.